Once upon a time, when I trusted people from Facebook Marketplace, I picked up this table. There was someone's unfinished project, and they said that the whole piece was solid wood. And I was like, they probably know, because they just covered it. And I asked my husband to pick it up without me. But I was wrong, so yeah. Hi everybody, welcome to another makeover. The legs and the frame were solid wood, but the shelf and the top, they were particle boards with walnut veneer. I started with scraping the old paint, and I can tell that someone did a really good job with this piece, refinish it before, because there was like multiple layers of the paint, and I can tell the piece has been sanded with a lower grit sandpaper, like maybe 100. On the legs, the paint was really stubborn, and instead of scraping for the next 3 days, I decided to go with a stripper. And normally, I would take the whole piece apart. And trust me, I tried. Like I said before, someone did a really good job with this table, and I think they used some type of epoxy glue to glue the legs to the top, so I couldn't take the table apart without breaking the legs. As you can see, the stripper worked well, and I used different tools, but so far this moon-shaped scraper was the best solution in this case. After playing with the legs, I decided there's no way I was gonna refinish both the shelf and the top. So I left the shelf behind. The top was already stripped by previous owner, but there was still primer in the wood grain. Oh my god, my favorite part. So I used my favorite Eco stripper, and instead of scraping it right away, I used brass wire brush, and I kind of brushed the wood grain, trying to get rid of that primer. And here's the second coat. I needed it because the primer was still there in the wood grain. While the top was drying, I sanded the legs and the frame with 120 grit sandpaper. Here I'm using the soft pad for sanding, and I can tell that it works great. But some areas I couldn't reach with my orbital sander, so I used my multi-tool. And in some areas I used my hands. I also stripped the other side of the top. Maybe some of you can say that it's not necessary, nobody's gonna see it, but for me, it's kind of dirty. It looks dirty, so I needed to clean it. When the top was completely dry, I sanded it down with 120 grit sandpaper, and I was hoping there would be no primer in the wood grain. And it looks pretty good, but there were some stains on the top, so I applied oxalic acid. And as soon as I applied it, you can see the primer in the wood grain. Still. Yeah, that was sad. I deactivated oxalic acid with baking soda solution and moved to the legs because there were some issues with the legs as well. After I sanded the legs down, I found out that there is some type of stains on the legs. But I have oxalic acid, not a problem. That's what I thought. I applied oxalic acid 3 times, and as you can see, it didn't work. So if you guys know what else could be used to get rid of stains, please let me know in the comments. I will really appreciate it. And here's my last try to get rid of the primer. I used a chemical stripper and the brass wire brush. It did help, but just a little bit. The primer was still in there. And if I wasn't so stubborn, I would make a right decision. I would buy a white stain, and I would stain the whole piece with this white stain. And it would be like whitewash kind of look. But instead, I decided to go in a totally opposite direction. I decided to stain it dark. I'm using the dark walnut stain, and then on top of it, I added black ebony stain. And still wasn't happy with the result. And I did the same to the top of the dresser, but I deleted the footage by accident. The sides of the top needed my attention as well, because it was a particle board. It was pretty smooth, but I wanted them to be a bit smoother, so I used a wood filler for that. To paint the sides, I used bare cabinet and furniture paint. I can't remember the color, it was one of their black colors. And here you see me doing a paint wash, black paint wash. Because after staining, even with the dark stain, there were still white spots. And I just mixed water and black paint in 1:1 ratio and gave it a try. and it actually worked. And you know what? I wish I used brown paint instead black paint. And I had it on hand, but I just didn't think about it. But it worked and I was happy. I was happy there were no white spots on the table anymore. For the top coat, I used Minwax Clear Satin Wipe on Poly. And I'll show you the final result in a second, but if you think that this is the end, it is not. So here's the table, and it turned out kind of dark. I personally like it, but it's hard to sell. That piece has been listed on the marketplace for months or so, and there were no hits on it, so I decided maybe I gotta redo it. Why not? Recently, I refinished the other table and there was a pattern on the top. I drew the pattern, so I decided to add the pattern to this table. And here is where I made a huge mistake. I actually was working on two pieces at the time, on this and the other one, and I made the same mistake for both of them. So here's the rule. If there is a wood grain on the surface and you want a sharper lines in your pattern, you need to do one coat of the clear top coat first and then paint over the top coat. So how it helps? The top coat fills up the wood grain underneath the tape and then your paint doesn't go there. Because I forgot, my lines were not sharp enough and I had the paint here and there. And I like the pattern, I like how it turned out, but it looked kind of sloppy. And the only thing I could think about, how do I make it work? How do I make it work? And I couldn't stop myself. I kind of got overwhelmed and I was trying to fix everything. And here it is. Lots of black lines. But I kind of like them. They don't look bad to me. The only thing I regret that I painted the sides of the table with this green paint. I should have left it black. I sealed it up with water-based poly and there we go, the final result. I don't hate it, but I'm not 100% happy. I think I gotta repaint the sides and I don't know, you might see this table again. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.